Francis Cherry was one of the most innovative politicians of the century, but also one of the least talented, I think. He had gotten elected in 1952 against Sid McMath, largely on a gimmick. He had called the Cherry Talkathon, in which he would go on a radio station and talk. He talked for 24 straight hours, and people could call in and talk to him, and for 24 straight hours without a wink of sleep, he talked. And that little gimmick got him all kinds of publicity, and he was able to use that to defeat Sid McMath in '52. His record as governor, he was a very conservative man, very honest, very conservative. But they raised his Public Service Commission, allowed electric rates to go up. He slashed welfare rolls and called people on welfare deadbeats and chiselers. And that seemed kind of heartless to people. And so in 1954, he was still considered unbeatable because we had this tradition in Arkansas that governors were allowed 2 terms. You needed 4 years in order to have a chance to put some kind of program into effect. So voters ordinarily gave their politicians 2 terms. So he ran again in 1954, but one man who thought he was vulnerable was a young man named Orville Eugene Faubus.
As a surprise, Orville E. Faubus from Huntsville, the postmaster, and owned a little weekly newspaper. He ran against Francis Cherry for a 2nd term and defeated him, and that was the summer. I was in college at the university, and I was the campaign driver for Governor Cherry that particular summer. In the summer of 1954, he was running for a 2nd term. Mind you, we only had 2-year terms. He was seeking a 2nd term. And this man Faubus came, as we say, down from the hills in Huntsville to Little Rock, right at the last, in the last 20 minutes. He paid his filing fee, and even the press didn't know him. They couldn't even spell Faubus. They spelled it F-A-B-U-S, F-A-B-A-S, whatever. They would not take a check from Governor Faubus, Orville E. Faubus. He had to pay them in cash, $1,500, to get his name on the ballot and to become a Democratic candidate for governor.
I believe that Orville Faubus was the last governor of Arkansas who was born in a log cabin. In fact, I'm pretty sure of that. He might actually have been the last Arkansas politician of any standing at all who was born in a log cabin. And it was a very humble place. So this is a point that he was very fond of making in his political career, that he was a poor boy who earned everything he got, and unlike certain Republicans that he could name, like Winthrop Rockefeller, who had everything handed to him on a silver spoon, as Mr. Faubus described. But he used this poor boy image to great effect. And it was true. I never met his father, Sam Faubus, but he was a socialist, and that was not just a term of art thrown around loosely. He was actually a member of the Socialist Party and an organizer for the Socialist Party. So Orville grew up in a socialist household, and he was quite proud of that after he got around to owning up to it.
But he proved to be a pretty good campaigner. He had a good knack for meeting people and talking to people and looking them in the eye. He was a very earnest guy. And while he was not a great orator, he had a good speaking style that came across. He communicated with people very well in his kind of Midwestern, kind of twangy voice, but he was quite a good politician.
I have been a county official. My people elected me to county office and re-elected me to the position.
He began at the county level. He first ran for office. It was like 1936, and I believe the office was county clerk. He came back after the war, and incidentally, he was a decorated Army officer in World War II. Came home to Madison County, bought the little local newspaper. He was known as the go-to guy in Madison County for people running for statewide office. And Sid McMath, who was governor at the time, thought so highly of Orville's political abilities that he hired him to come to Little Rock and work in his office. And during that period, while he was working in McMath's office, he came to know just about every person in Arkansas who had any political influence. So when he decided to run for himself in 1954, he had a big leg up. He knew exactly who to call in each of the 75 counties, names, phone numbers, and who to avoid. And it was a great advantage in that race in 1954.
There were others in the race, but in the end it boiled down to a contest between Governor Cherry and Orville Faubus. And Faubus, as I say, nobody knew too much about Faubus's past. They knew something about his ideology. He was liberal. He'd supported the highway program and he supported the math administration. But sometime late in the campaign, in the first primary, Cherry came across the information. Somebody unearthed an old newspaper story of some kind that identified Orville Faubus as a student at Commonwealth College.
And it was on the list of subversive colleges. They flew the hammer and sickle as a flag. They didn't fly the American flag. They flew the hammer and sickle. It was more of a socialistic sort of a college and institution. It wasn't large. It probably had 50, 60, 70 students at any time. But Orville Faubus had been a student there.
So this became the big issue in the campaign. This was during the McCarthy era and the kind of communist baiting era. And Cherry decided he could ride that issue.
Faubus kept saying that Cherry's spreading lies about me about going to this Commonwealth College. And so Cherry says, well, wait a minute, you did go to Commonwealth College. And Faubus says, no, I didn't. I didn't go to Commonwealth. And so Mr. St. John, that owned the Mena Star, the newspaper, one night to the governor's mansion, and I was sitting there watching this unfold. And Mr. St. John says, here is the school newspaper, and here is the president of the student body, Orville E. Faubus, from Huntsville, Arkansas. And sure enough, he had gone there. Cherry says, well, I'm not going to call him a communist, but I am going to say that he's not telling us the truth. So Cherry goes on live television and says, this man is not telling us the truth. He says he hasn't gone to Commonwealth College. He was president of the student body. Here is his picture.
It backfired terrifically on him, thanks in large part to the executive editor of the Arkansas Gazette, Harry Ashmore. And Harry came to Orville's defense, in fact wrote the speech that got him out of trouble. And Orville himself told me years later, he said, it was absolutely true. Harry was my friend, and he helped me and probably made it possible for me to win that election. He went on the air and explained all about what he'd been doing there. He was a poor boy just coming down from the hills and needed an education. And Harry, who was very gifted with words, made it sound all very plausible.
A young man trying against great odds in those grinding Depression years to complete his education. A young man who went out of the green valley of his youth to a struggling little college where he had been told a poor boy could work for an education. It was thus I went to Commonwealth College in search of an opportunity I did not find.
That turned out to be a turning point in the election. And as I say, the use of Commonwealth against Faubus backfired on Francis Cherry.
And Faubus capitalized on it. And as I said, he was a sly old fox, and he took Cherry out. After only 18 months or 2 years in office, he defeated Cherry and then went on to become governor for 10 years, 5 terms as governor, Orville E. Faubus.